So, with the remaster finally out, there have been some changes to recall knowledge, and it might be a good time to kind of take a new look at recall knowledge in light of the changes. There are some things that have actually changed, as well as a lot of clarification. And with all that being said, we're going to do a little quick tip on the new recall knowledge. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So, recall knowledge is still the recall knowledge that you know and love, but let's go ahead and start with the untrained. So, the entry for recall knowledge untrained lists skills, and once again, it's pretty much any skill, as well as I love how they put others at the end. The skills they list are arcana, crafting, lore, medicine, nature, occultism, religion, society, comma, others. But the description is to remember useful information on a topic you can attempt to recall knowledge. This action is one you're likely to use frequently. Learning more about the world and people around you is one of the best ways to inform your decisions, and recalling knowledge can help you figure out how to best fight monsters and figure out puzzles and social challenges. You might know basic information about something without needing to attempt a check, but recall knowledge requires you to stop and think for a moment so you can recollect more specific facts and apply them. You might even need to spend time investigating first. For instance, to use medicine to learn the cause of death, you might need to conduct a forensic examination before attempting to recall knowledge. So there is, once again, some clarification here as to how you might want to use it. The verbiage is actually a little bit different, and it's not that different in the untrained, but I do like how it seems to be better explained for the untrained. Now with that, let's go ahead and go into the actual trained action. So recall knowledge is a single action with the concentrate and the secret trait. The description is you attempt a skill check to try to remember a bit of knowledge regarding a topic related to that skill. Suggest which skill you'd like to use and ask the GM one question. The GM determines the DC. You might need to collaborate with the GM to narrow down the question or skills, and you can decide not to recall knowledge before committing to the action if you don't like your options. Now, on a critical success, you recall the knowledge accurately. The GM answers your question truthfully and either tells you additional information or context or answers one follow-up question. On a success, you recall the knowledge accurately and the GM answers your question truthfully. Failure is just a failure, and a critical failure, there's another difference here. You recall incorrect information. The GM answers your question falsely, and here's the difference, or decides to give you no information as on a failure. So the difference here is that in the old reading on a critical failure, once again, it's all GM discretion, so it wasn't mandatory. However, the GM now has the written option to go ahead and not answer the question at all, as well as you now have the option to collaborate with the GM before you ask the question to narrow down what the questions might be or what skills you would like to use. So, and you can also totally back out of the recall knowledge before committing to the action if you don't like the options that the GM has given you. Now, all of this was GM fiat before or GM discretion before on any of these things, but now it explicitly states that there are additional options. Now, it still has the kind of information that you get based on the various levels of training that you have. For example, if you are untrained, you might know the name of a ruler, the head of the state, or a key noble or a major deity. If you are trained, you might know the line of succession for a family or the core doctrines of a major deity. If you're an expert, you might know the entire genealogy of a minor noble, teachings of an ancient priest, or maybe major extraplanar temples of a deity. And if you are legendary, you might know the existence of a long-lost noble heir or secret doctrines of a religion. So these are just kind of the different depths or levels of information that you would know based on what your actual status is in a particular skill you are trying to do a recall knowledge on. And now there is a whole new insert on recall knowledge skills, and it kind of goes into what you might know based on the different type of skills you could use or what you might want to come up with. So there are some topics that might appear on multiple lists by multiple skills, but the skills could give slightly different information. And the example they use is Arcana might tell you about the magical defenses of a construct, whereas crafting could tell you about its sturdy resistance to physical attacks. So if you're doing Arcana, you would use that for arcane theories, magical traditions, creatures of arcane significance, and arcane planes, crafting, alchemical reactions and creatures, item value, engineering, unusual materials, and constructs. For lore, it would be the subject of the lore skills subcategory. Medicine, diseases, poison, wounds, and forensics. Nature, the environment, flora, geography, weather, creatures of natural origin, and natural planes. Occultism would be ancient mysteries, folk superstition, obscure philosophy, creatures of occult significance, and esoteric planes. Religion could be divine agents, divine planes, theology, obscure myths, and creatures of religious significance. And society would be things like local history, key personalities, legal institutions, societal structure, and humanoid culture. Now, they do also kind of elaborate here a little bit more about using an applicable lore. So if you use an applicable lore to recall knowledge about a topic, such as engineering lore, instead of crafting to find the structural weakness in a bridge, it typically comes with a lower DC. And it has here a thing that says your special interest can pay off. So I don't want to go ahead and read this whole thing word for everyone. However, you can basically get the GM's permission to use a different but related skill. And depending on what that skill is, it will generally be a higher DC than the normal would be. For example, let's say you don't have engineering and all you have is crafting. Well, because engineering is so specialized and the crafting is more general, because it's more general, the DC would be higher. So the GM also might allow checks to recall knowledge using other skills. And they have an example here as well. And you might assess the skill of an acrobat using acrobatics as opposed to performance. If you're using a physical skill, then the GM will most likely have you use a mental modifier, is what they're saying, which is intelligence, instead of the skill's normal physical attribute modifier. And then the other big new thing that they have is recall knowledge questions. So I like how they basically describe this and gives you a little bit more as a player to go with. And I'll go ahead and read the first little part of it. But when encountering a subject for the first time, your first question will likely be a basic, "What is it?" which the GM can answer with a name and a basic description. If you already know this base level of detail on the subject, they have a whole list in this section that includes some reasonable questions that you could ask for a recall knowledge. And the GM will determine what other questions they might allow. But the questions they actually give you are pretty good. For example, if it's a creature, you could ask, can it be reasoned with? Or what environments does it live in? All the way to maybe what its most notable offensive ability or vulnerabilities or resistances. Magic, how can it be avoided? What type of people use this magic? So might be able to kind of clue in on who your opponents might be, or how long does it last? Organizations, what kind of influence does it have? How large is it? Where is it headquartered? Things like that give you an idea of what you might be able to ask. People, what's their personality like? What do they look like? Do they have any notable talents? Do they have any notable allies or enemies? Once again, so you might be able to key a little bit more in on that person and know exactly what you might need to know from them. For sites, what's its general location? How large is it? What's the government like? Do any notable people live there? Once again, a series of questions that allow you to key in on specific information. These sample questions really do assist new players on what they could possibly do and what kind of things they could possibly ask in order to make it easier to use this recall knowledge and get actual information that could be helpful rather than kind of generic information. Now, I do love the expansion and the descriptions and the amount of detail that went into the new recall knowledge, and I think it'll be very helpful. But I do hope you enjoyed this quick tip on recall knowledge, and if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.